I caught my manager stealing my tips, but I never expected how far he'd go to cover it up. It started small. A missing dollar here, a couple of bucks short there. At first, I thought I was just miscounting at the end of my shifts. I was working at a busy restaurant, busting my ass every night, so a little mistake wouldn't have been surprising. But then I started noticing a pattern. Every time he closed, Mark, my manager, my tips came up short. At first, I doubted myself. Maybe I miscalculated? Maybe I forgot a tip out to the kitchen? But the unease kept gnawing at me. Something wasn't right. One night, I decided to be extra careful. Before my shift ended, I counted my tips meticulously, double-checking every dollar before sealing the envelope. It was supposed to be locked in the safe overnight, untouched until morning when the owner would distribute them. Except, the next morning, my envelope was lighter. It wasn't just a few dollars this time. It was $37 short. That's when I knew this wasn't a coincidence. Someone was taking from us. And I had a pretty good idea who. Mark had been acting strange lately. He was always the last one out, always offering to handle the money for us. If we had any complaints, he'd brush them off, say we probably miscounted. But it was happening too often, to too many of us. I needed proof. The next weekend, I devised a plan. I placed a $20 bill at the very top of my envelope, but I marked it. A tiny, almost invisible red dot in the corner. If it disappeared, I'd know exactly where it went. I also made sure to count my tips on camera, my phone propped up in my locker. If Mark tried to pull anything, this time, I'd have video proof. The shift was brutal. We were slammed, orders flying in nonstop. By the end of the night, I was exhausted. I could barely keep my eyes open as I placed my envelope into the safe. But as I walked out, I saw something that sent a chill down my spine. He was standing by the office door, waiting. Watching. Our eyes met for a split second before I turned away. But that was all I needed. He knew. The next morning, I arrived early, my heart pounding. I checked my tips first thing. Gone. The Mark 20? Disappeared. But here's the kicker, it wasn't in the safe. I checked the registers, the office, even the trash. Nothing. Then, as I was wiping down the counter, I spotted it. The exact same 20 sitting in the petty cash drawer. Mark wasn't just stealing, he was laundering our tips through the restaurant's money. That was it. That was my smoking gun. I gathered my evidence, videos, logs, photos, and took it straight to the owner. I expected shock, outrage, some kind of reaction. But instead, he just sighed and rubbed his temples. This isn't the first time, he muttered. My blood ran cold. Not the first time? Turns out, Mark had been caught before. Not just here, but at another location. But instead of firing him, they just transferred him. The owner gave him one more chance. And now, I had proof that chance was wasted. I thought it was over. That Mark would be fired and justice would be served. I was wrong. Because Mark found out what I did. That night, as I was walking to my car, I heard footsteps behind me. Too fast. Too close. My stomach dropped. I barely had time to turn before someone grabbed my shoulder and slammed me against the door. His face was twisted in anger, his breath reeking of beer. You think you're smart? He hissed. You think they're gonna believe you over me? I tried to push him off, but he was stronger. You don't know what you just did, he growled. You just ruined my life. And now I'm gonna step away. A voice cut through the night. Mark froze. I turned my head, and there stood the owner, arms crossed, phone in hand. I saw everything, he said coldly. And this time, you're not getting another chance. Mark's grip loosened. His face turned pale. Pack your stuff, the owner said. You're done. Mark tried to stammer out an excuse, but there was nothing left to say. The next morning he was gone. But the damage was done. I should have felt relieved. I should have been happy that he was finally gone. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Because men like Mark? They never think they've lost.